A discipline, not a trend. PII practice publications. The Philosophical Intelligence Institute is built around a simple distinction. A discipline is not a trend. A framework is not an opinion. A trend passes through culture for a moment. A discipline builds knowledge, method, standards, tools, and practice. An opinion reacts to events. A framework gives people a structured way to interpret events. This is the foundation of PII. PII does not exist merely to comment on the world. It exists to build a discipline. Philosophical intelligence. Philosophical intelligence is the structured ability to interpret meaning, identity, narrative, fairness, legitimacy, symbolism, lived experience, and governance in complex human systems. It is not a slogan. It is not a mood. It is not a personal viewpoint. It is a discipline for understanding what lies beneath visible events. And because it is a discipline, it requires more than ideas. It requires concepts. It requires models. It requires frameworks. It requires diagnostic tools. It requires practitioner standards. It requires ethical boundaries. It requires practice. This is why PII has developed not only theoretical publications, but also practice publications. Workbooks, diagnostic books, instructional guides, field manuals, practitioner manuals, research logbooks, assessment rubrics, matrices, templates, canvases, workshop guides. These publications exist because philosophical intelligence is not only something to read, it is something to practice. A theory explains, a framework organizes, a tool diagnoses, a workbook trains, a field guide supports practice, a practitioner manual protects ethical use. Together, these publications turn PII from a collection of ideas into an applied discipline. This matters because many real-world problems are not only technical, they are interpretive. A governance failure may look like a policy problem, but beneath it may be a legitimacy problem. An organizational transformation may look like a communication problem, but beneath it may be an identity problem. A public conflict may look like disagreement, but beneath it may be a narrative breakdown. A social system may appear irrational, but beneath the surface there may be meaning collapse, fairness injury, symbolic pressure, or lived experience that has not been understood. PII frameworks are designed for precisely these situations. They help the practitioner ask, what kind of problem is this? What meaning is being assigned to it? Which identity is under pressure? Which narrative is organizing perception? Which fairness burden has become too heavy? Which legitimacy signal has failed? Which action is admissible? This is not opinion. It is disciplined interpretation. PII practice publications make this discipline usable. They translate theory into structured exercises, diagnostic sequences, worksheets, prompts, field questions, research templates, and reflected practices. The issue ontology matrix helps classify the true nature of a problem before action is taken. The governance legitimacy test helps assess whether authority is experienced as justified. The narrative meaning analysis grid helps map the stories that shape perception. The transformation identity framework helps examine whether change threatens or preserves identity continuity. The behavioral insight ladder helps interpret behavior through lived experience, emotional tone, and meaning. The research logbooks and matrices help users record observations, patterns, contradictions, and tool applications with methodological discipline. The assessment rubrics help define standards of competence. The field guides help practitioners apply the work responsibly in live settings. These are not decorative additions to the theory. They are the practice layer of the discipline.
They answer the question, how do we actually use philosophical intelligence? How do we apply it to organizations, to governance, to leadership, to AI, to public policy, to conflict, to cross-cultural interpretation, to transformation, to personal reflection, to research? The answer is through disciplined practice. PII does not claim that every reader must become a professional practitioner, but it does insist that serious interpretation requires structure. Without structure, interpretation becomes projection. Without ethics, interpretation becomes overreach. Without practice standards, insight can become authority without responsibility. This is why PII practice publications emphasize restraint. Observation before interpretation, interpretation before action, classification before intervention, consent before influence, boundaries before application, and withdrawal when the conditions for responsible practice are not present. The aim is not to make the practitioner more forceful. The aim is to make the practitioner more trustworthy. This is especially important because PII works with deep human structures, meaning, identity, narrative, fairness, legitimacy, symbolism, lived experience. These are not superficial categories. They shape how people understand themselves, their institutions, their communities, and their futures. To work with them requires care. A PII workbook can help a reader examine a situation more clearly. A diagnostic guide can help a consultant avoid misclassification. A field manual can help a practitioner slow down before acting. A research matrix can help an analyst organize complex observations. A rubric can help assess whether a person has understood the method properly. A practitioner guide can help prevent misuse of interpretive power. This is what makes PII different from commentary. Commentary responds. Discipline develops. Commentary offers a view. Discipline offers a method. Commentary may persuade. Discipline trains judgment. Commentary may describe complexity. Discipline gives people tools to work inside complexity. PII IBETIS publications are therefore central to the Institute's mission. They show that philosophical intelligence is not merely theoretical. It is operational. It can be studied. It can be applied. It can be practiced. It can be taught. It can be refined. It can be used responsibly in real-world settings. This is why PII publications increasingly take practical forms. Not only monographs, but workbooks. Not only doctrine statements, but diagnostic instruments. Not only models, but field protocols. Not only frameworks, but practitioner guides. Not only research, but applied method. The goal is to create a bridge between philosophical depth and real-world action. because the modern world does not only need more information, it needs better interpretation. It needs people who can tell the difference between a technical problem and a legitimacy crisis, between behavioral resistance and identity threat, between communication failure and narrative collapse, between efficiency and governance, between opinion and framework, between trend and discipline. PIE exists to build that discipline. A discipline capable of helping people understand meaning before it collapses. Identity before it is threatened. Narrative before it hardens. Fairness before it becomes grievance. Legitimacy before it fails. And action before it becomes harm. This is the purpose of PIE practice publications. They empower the reader to move from passive understanding to active interpretation, from reading to application, from theory to method, from method to practice, from practice to responsible action. Philosophical intelligence is not a trend, it is a discipline. PIE frameworks are not opinions. They are structured instruments for interpreting and acting within complexity. A discipline, not a trend. A framework, not an opinion. Philosophical Intelligence Institute. Frameworks turn complexity into admissible decisions. Philosophical Intelligence Institute.org